to live a life pleasing to God. And the wisdom of God will instruct us and inform us and enable us to accept the pain in our life and also to see how God is using it and making it work together for good, for our good, and for the good of those who love Him as well.
And so in a real sense, and you would say that there is some kind of spiritual connection that guides us once we tune in with God, that there is really, we can only have access to the Spirit and recognize that we have access to the Spirit by believing and doing the will of God. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, well, I think that once we choose God, once we turn to Him, I think He becomes more active in our lives. But I think He is there from the beginning. I think He is there from the beginning, guiding and leading as far as we will allow Him to. But once we turn to Him, once He achieves the goal of getting us to turn to Him, which often involves allowing us to make bad decisions, allowing us to experience some of the consequences of our bad decisions. And I think there are times when God decides to bring pain in our lives as a part of His effort to get us to choose Him. Because His goal is to help us to become more like His Son, Jesus. And to become more like Jesus is to grow in kindness, is to grow in patience, is to grow in forgiveness, is to grow in being unselfish, is to grow in being compassionate and kind and caring and giving to other people. So this is God's goal. He wants us to become more like His Son, and He knows that in order to achieve that goal, He's got to allow us to go through some things, to hurt, to be disappointed, to be frustrated, to have some losses in life related to physical death. So God allows and uses our pain and our frustration, the adversity in our lives, and He makes it all work together for our good to help us to grow spiritually.
You know, Dr. Poe, all of that brings me to think about the spiritual. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart. I mean, I think that in a real sense what you're saying here is that there is a yearning that we have, and especially after we undergo some kind of pain or some kind of suffering, that idea of perhaps if we could become a Christian and something that we really desire to do, that's my interpretation of what you're saying, you know, how it would have an impact upon me.
Yes, I think that God, having put a part of His Spirit in each of us, that Spirit reaches out in us or inspires us to reach out to God, to turn to God, to live for Him, to please Him. And until we turn to God, I think it was one great saint who says, our soul is restless until it finds rest in God. So there's an emptiness in us until we find God, until we begin to try to live our lives pleasing to Him. There's an emptiness there that nothing else can fill. And by the way, let's go back to pain, because I think that the pain that we struggle to overcome, the pain that we struggle to escape often, the pain that we struggle to neutralize through drugs and sex and alcohol and food, the pain that we struggle to escape from is a pain that God allows so that He can use it, He can use it to bless us, to draw us closer to Him, and to get us to commit our lives to Him. So the pain that God allows, it cannot be coped with effectively. It cannot be escaped entirely. It cannot be overcome.
Drugs,
no matter alcohol, wealth, fame.
Very good.
That pain will not go away until we turn to God, and He's the only one who can empower us to accept it and to prosper based on how we cope for it in His way. The way I cope for the pain in my life, Dr. Haney, is by trying to live my life pleasing to God. That's the way I cope with the pain.
And which is something that covers all bases. If that is a central idea and a central thing that you're trying to do, no matter whatever happens, and as long as you're committed to that, then you're all right.
Absolutely.
Is that, well, absolutely. I kind of feel that way too.
Now, trying to live one's life pleasing to God does not eliminate pain, but the Holy Spirit gets involved in our daily experience, enabling us to accept it and to be blessed by it. Okay. Otherwise, we see pain as the enemy.
Good. Okay.
And we spend our time trying to overcome it, trying to escape from it.
Very good. Of course, let us take this second commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. CPoe, and he's talking about some of the ways of love and the benefit in a real sense of pain in our lives, primarily because it forces us to turn to God. Amen. And of course, Dr. Poe, let's not only talk about some of the ways of love, but let's talk about some of your writings, because I understand that you've got one, Imogene Reborn, that has the possibilities of perhaps one day making the big screen, which is to say that people might, there might be a movie that might come. Let's talk about that from that perspective.
Dr. Haney, we wrote this book in collaboration with Kathy Macias, who is an award-winning author in California. We started in 2004. The book was published in 2005. In 2006, was accepted in competition for a Pulitzer Prize. It's a fiction book, and basically the theme is the fact that faith in God, forgiveness, and trying to live one's life pleasing to God, that is, trying to live an obedient life before God, can overcome the damage of being abused. In her case, she was sexually abused by her racist and alcoholic father. She was mentally and physically abused by her mother. She was abused through 2 marriages. And eventually then she comes back home and connects with an Afro-American pastor. She's Caucasian, and he leads her to forgive those persons who've abused her. And so she decides to turn to God, and she begins to attend this particular church that happens to be an Afro-American church. So this book is an example of how God allowed her to be abused early on, sexually abused by her own biological father now, between ages 10 and 15, sexually abused, mentally and physically abused by her mother, physically and emotionally abused by the first husband, sexually abused by the second husband. God allowed all of that, but then he came right back and used what she had been through, the trauma, the abuse, what she had been through, to teach, to guide her to him, and to guide her to forgive and to live a transformed life. And so and so that's the story of Imogene. We feel that it's a powerful message. The book has, as I said, it was accepted in competition for a Pulitzer Prize. It's available Amazon online, Amazon.com. It's also available here in Nashville at Cokesbury Bookstore, and it can be ordered through any bookstore. It's a powerful book, and most people who read the book said, I couldn't put it down. Now, the other book that we've written is called The Prayer Response. I'm the sole author of this particular book. It's a series of essays on different subjects, and related to pain. I think without being prayerful, it's impossible, I believe, to accept pain, the reality of pain in one's life. I think it's impossible to really gain God's perspective on how He would like us to view the pain in our life. And so I think that this book then speaks to just how essential and how necessary prayer is if we are to acquire a Christ